So you're not listing.
Oh my gosh, there's a lot of work they do.
Jake, how are
Well,
things?
you kind of, you always do this anyway.
There's a lot of kids.
No, she's actually she's got a private
Just getting there.
massages for I don't worry about that at all. She's good.
No, I mean, as long as she's okay with the work she's doing. Andy's usually done too, so just make sure that.
I would like to call the October 4th, 2018 City Council meeting to order, and we will have our opening by Councilmember Dave Adams.
Is there anybody in the audience who would like to offer an invocation?
Landon
There's
Hull.
no need, no pressure.
Thank you, Landon.
Our dear Heavenly Father, we thank Thee for this day and our many blessings. Thank Thee for letting us to be able to meet here and partake of this meeting. Please help us to have a good time and get through all the business we need to. Please help us to have a good night tonight. And in the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
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 All right, do you want to give us the pledge?
If the audience wants to follow me in the pledge, please arise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right. Well, last council meeting, we were able to swear in our youth city council, and we tonight would like to swear in our youth city court. I have asked Councilmember DeCare, who is the liaison, to read the names and ask that you come and stand over here as your names are read.
So I don't think everybody is here this evening from the emails that I read, but I'll just start at the top and we'll work our way through. Jeremy Whitaker, Hannah Coombs, Cam Barton, Hannah Cutright, Caitlin Bledsoe, sorry, Lydia Johnson, Grace Kay, Noah Coombs, Logan Hull, Nate Sconard, Aaron McGrath, Mason Child, Riley Hertberg, Hawkeye Alpers, McKenna Tracy, Gabby Buchanan, Amelia Luck, Lucy Whitaker, Caden Smith, Levi Rasmussen, Ella Nebeker, and last but not least, Kayla Gage.
First of all, I want to say thank you to everybody who helps to run the youth court. These kids are great, but they couldn't do what they do without the help of Kim Smith and Tina Johnson and others. So thank you for everybody who's willing to help. So I want to say congratulations on being chosen as a judge for the 2018-2019 Kaysville Youth Court. You will be performing a great service for our community, and we appreciate and recognize that service. Membership in the Kaysville Youth Court is a privilege. As a member of the Kaysville Youth Court, you are expected to serve as a role model for the community at all times. You are expected to uphold the strictest ethical rule of confidentiality. You are expected to demonstrate outstanding citizenship in school, at home, and in the community. Once again, I'd like to congratulate you on this achievement. I'd like to now have you raise your right hand for the administration of the Youth Court Membership Oath. Do you solemnly affirm that you will keep confidential the information that comes to your knowledge as a member of the Kaysville Youth Court? Yes. Okay, very good. Do you solemnly affirm that all of your actions as a member of the Kaysville Youth Court will be free of bias and prejudice against any other person's age, race, sex, religion, national origin, or disability? Yes, good. Do you solemnly affirm that you will faithfully discharge and perform all responsibilities and duties required of you as a member of the Kaysville Youth Court? Yes, thank you. As the mayor of the city of Kaysville, I now appoint you as official members of the 2018-2019 Kaysville Youth Court.
Can I say one thing to him? Just hang around after the picture just for one more presentation, and then you guys are free to leave.
All right. Do you want to, council, do you want to come down? It's going to be a mock meeting. All right. Just be aware of this machine right here.
The council wants statistics.
Oh, thank you. I'll make sure they get it.
Just fill in. Push together. And how about you guys in the back? Got a lot of taller folks. All right. Come on over here. Try to make this centered. Very good. All right. Wonderful. All right, and we have one more special presentation, and I'd like Chief Oberg to come forward, please.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Just a couple quick comments about the youth court and what they do for us. That they are an important program for us, and it's run almost exclusively through volunteer hours. But the purpose of youth court, in a nutshell, is to provide another means of dealing with what would be a criminal violation, an offense perpetrated by our youth, other than sending them to juvenile court and providing the stigma of criminalizing our youth and things like that. It provides a different avenue for that, and they've been going for about 2 decades and have, in that time, just been a huge service to our community and our youth and developing leaders in our community. Last year, we were notified that one of the people that run this program for us was going to retire, and so this year we just wanted to give a little bit of recognition for her and her nearly 2 decades of service for the city and youth court. And with that, if I could have Wendy Bennett come up. I think Wendy has been involved with youth court 1 year after it started, and I believe 19 years. Is that right? 18 years. So I've got with me Sergeant Benoit. He is our facilitator as far as the police department goes. He liaisons our cases with the youth court and really knows a lot more about the youth court than I do. So I'm going to turn the time over to him to.
All right. Thank you for letting us take a little bit of time. I've worked with Wendy for the last 4 years, like Chief Oberg said, as part of the youth court program. And from the very beginning, I was very impressed with the amount of time and the hours that she volunteered, week after week, and she did a great job. So this is a huge loss to the youth court program, and hopefully, and we know it'll continue doing well. And we wanted to take this opportunity to recognize Wendy tonight and thank her for everything she's done. So tonight we want to recognize Wendy with the Citizen Service Award. I'll read the description of that. The Kaysville Police Department recognizes Wendy Bennett for her dedicated volunteer service to the Kaysville City Youth Court program from 2001 to 2018. Wendy Bennett joined youth court as a volunteer when the program was in its early stages. For the next 17 years, she helped successfully administer the program, providing an alternative to criminal penalties to many of our city's youth. During this time, the youth court processed over 800 cases, resulting in over 17,000 community service hours, 550 essays, 900 counseling and tutoring classes, and 1,100 apology letters. Through this program, Wendy Bennett has positively impacted the lives of hundreds of youth and rendered a great service to Kaysville City and the Kaysville Police Department as a result. Thank you.
Can we get a picture with you guys? And we'll let everybody who's here for youth court, we're not going to make you stay for the whole meeting. Come on. But you're welcome to stay. All right. Okay. Do we have any declarations of conflict of interest? No? Okay. Thank you. All right. We'll move on to our consent items. Anybody want to pull anything from our consent agenda?
Mayor, we have the meeting minutes from September 6th. I've reviewed them, of course. I've done them, but I really think I'm missing something, and I need to wait until the next meeting.
So I think we will remove minutes from September 6th, 2018 from that. And said A. Anything else anybody would like to remove from consent? At this time, I would, yes, Councilmember Adams.
Yeah, item E.
Okay. All right. Okay. Would somebody like to move the consent agenda minus E?
And A.
And A, thank you.
I'll move that we approve consent items B, C, and D, removing A and E.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember DeCare and seconded by Councilmember Adams. Let's go with any comments. Councilmember Adams.
Just would like to gain...
We're voting on moving the consent agenda.
Aye.
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 Thank you. The consent agenda items pass 5-0. Councilmember Adams.
Yeah, I'd like to gain some understanding on this project. Half of this sidewalk project abuts up to a recently improved subdivision. I'm just curious why the developer didn't put those improvements in at his own cost, why we're bearing that burden. I know it's state tax dollars, but
we're not.
To me,
the
it's irrelevant.
developer is installing his portion of those improvements, and we've reduced the project accordingly.
So the red line, no,
the red
excuse
line
me.
is what our project includes. The yellow line will be done by the developer. But
Crystal clear, understand that. I'm talking about the red line. I understand that the Whitaker development is putting his in, the yellow. I'm talking about the red. I'm talking about that lot at the end of the Symphony Homes development that didn't get sidewalk installed by the developer.
all right. Initially, probably I missed it when we developed that property because it was a backyard.
Is it something that we could go back to them and
We don't have a mechanism to go back on it.
question answered? Thanks, Andy.
Okay. Thank you. All right. I'd like to entertain a motion to move item E.
I'll move that we approve item E, award of bid for Kaysville Main Street Sidewalk Project.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Barber and seconded by Councilmember Garn. Any questions? Okay, let's vote. Councilmember Page.
Aye.
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 All right, motion passes 5-0. Thank you. All right, before we move on, yeah, I believe, do we have the sign-up sheets for the action items?
Sorry.
Thank you. All right, let's go to administrative law judge ordinance change. And Lyle, thank you.
Okay, Mayor and Council, just to go back a couple weeks, we visited about this on our work agenda and the administrative law judge and what it is. In brief review, what we're looking at doing is creating a position essentially within the city where we would have a third-party attorney on contract in some fashion, yet to be determined, that would hear appeals, variances, items dealing with land use decisions. It's something that was brought to our attention some time ago in our ordinances that we don't clearly provide for when somebody has a concern about a land use decision or issue. So in short, people who have concerns about a decision that was made by staff and myself regarding land use decisions would take that to the Planning Commission for an appeal or further review. Under this new consideration, if a decision is made by either the City Council or the Planning Commission, whoever is the land use authority in that case, this would give the public or those interested parties a means and mechanism for appealing that process or decision. It's a pretty specific review standard that they're doing. It's thinking it's not on popularity. They go through some pretty specific criteria of the record and the process that was followed. One item of note that we felt was appropriate to recommend to staff based on some of the comment from the work session under 2-8-3, it's in red in your packet. It previously said must be accompanied by a filing fee of $250 and outright had the number. We felt we would pull that out and within the consolidated fee schedule list the fees there accordingly, so as they would be adjusted over time, it wouldn't require the change of this entire ordinance. Other than that, it is intact as it was presented at the previous meeting, and I'd be happy to take any questions as well before the council if you should desire.
All right, thank you. We do not have anybody signed up to speak to this item, so we'll go to questions from council. Councilmember Adams, any questions?
It talks in, in the first paragraph, or roughly the first one, it still mentions it's providing a hearing to employees, citizens, and agencies.
And this all surrounds land use, correct? Like you can only go to this guy or gal for land use issues, correct?
Yeah, so
so this would be like an employee who has land in the city or something like that, then is that how that would tie in?
Well, correct. So anybody within the city that's dealing with an appeal to those land use decisions could be served by this. So there's a provision, I think, in that same paragraph. Let me make sure I'm getting you the correct information here, Council. Where it essentially says, unless otherwise stated within the ordinance, they would be the appeal authority. And so that's where it falls back to those staff grievances are provided for elsewhere within the ordinances, where the council hears those. Similarly, the Planning Commission is specifically stated to be the appeal body to staff decisions. And so where it states previously, that is the reason for that. And looking through a lot of text here to find the specific line on it, but I think it's 2-8-3A, unless otherwise expressly stated. So, and we do have a couple of specifics within the ordinance that provide for those other items that I believe are being considered.
So an employee could then go to this administrative law judge to appeal some action. Reason being, over the years, there's been issues, nothing to do with you, prior to your tenure, for the most part. But there's been things where employees, have felt like, a decision was made, and whatever disciplinary action that may have been, and they felt really reluctant to come back because the appeal body was the council, so they felt that would be a biased environment for them to step back into, and they just gave up. Would there be a possibility that that we could loop that in here, that employees could, if in the event thereof, go to this administrative law judge for their appeal instead of us?
For these types of decisions, absolutely. So
outside of land use.
This doesn't deal with that specifically. That could be once the office is established, that could be a change made, and it looks like the attorney maybe has something to add to that could correct it.
We could certainly change the ordinance to reflect that. We'd probably want to find several administrative law judges in that case, because Lyle and I kind of anticipate that we'd find somebody that was specialized in land use to be our land use administrative law judge. We could certainly find a hearing officer or a administrative law judge that specialized in personnel law if the council wanted to go that way.
I just think that while we're going down this road, why polarize it to just one category? So that's maybe the biggest concern I have with the document is we're only saying, okay, if you have a land use concern, you can go to this guy. Otherwise, the council is still your appeals body. I think we ought to open up the scope.
Okay.
Just another note, we also outline our employee grievance policy in our human resource manual, so that we'd have to just adjust that as well to point to this or some other.
So that is something that the council could look at in the future if we decide to go that way. Sure. All right. Thank you. Council Member Adams.
The other question is more, it's not for you, Lyle. It's more, I guess, for perhaps the mayor, whoever's in charge of such matters. Is there a matter of policy why the public hearing on this matter was held by the Planning Commission and not by us, the legislative body, who sets policies and approves them? How come we didn't get the public hearing? Why did the Planning Commission?
And I could speak to that. Per state statute, any item that has to do with the land use provision, the public hearing has to be held, and it's with the Planning Commission. Is the way the ordinances and statutes are set up. An additional hearing could be done with the planning or with the city council, should that be desired. And so that zoning actions, zoning ordinances, and so forth, and this where it deals with land use actions falls into that category as well.
Okay, thank you. All right, Councilmember DeCare.
Any questions on this?
Yeah.
No, good.
Okay. Councilmember Barber.
All my questions were answered.
Okay. Councilmember Garn.
Questions. I hate to say this, though, but there is one. You might want to look at it or have reviewed one more time. There's one small typo. It's totally immaterial. There's the word city in there without a C one time. So
the idiot.
We'll amend that. All right. Councilmember Page.
Yeah, no questions.
Okay, thank you. I'll entertain a motion at this time.
I'll make a motion that we approve the administrative law judge ordinance change.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Okay. It's been moved by Councilmember Barber and seconded by Councilmember Page. Any comments at this time? Seeing none, we'll start the vote. Councilmember Garn.
Aye.
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 Motion passes 5-0. Thank you. All right. Next item, Schick Farm Open Space Agreement. Andy.
The last several weeks, the city's been in negotiation with the Schick Farms Homeowners Association on this. As the council, you've seen it a couple times already. They have some open space down in their neighborhood, as highlighted here on the map. They desire to have altered and remove their responsibility for it in some regard. We've negotiated an agreement with them. It's the same agreement you looked at a month or so ago. Outlines all the provisions of them. They're offering to give that to the city at no cost, with the city agreeing to do certain items and not do certain items on the property. I think you've had the agreement for some time and understand those provisions. The Homeowners Association had a meeting about a week ago and voted among themselves to accept that agreement as proposed. So it's back here now for the city to take final action.
All right. Thank you. All right. I'll now open a public comment period on this item. Jennifer Borup, please. And you have 3 minutes.
My name is Jennifer Borup. Yes.
One quick thing. If you haven't been here before, it is your time to make comments, but council will not answer you back. So just share your thoughts. All right. Thank you.
Okay. My mother lives in the little community there next to Schick Farms. So I have been down there a lot, but I have had many thoughts in the city about issues with HOAs. So I kind of want to just address that. I think we have a problem where we have developers come in and they are doing their part in putting in the green space that's required from the city. But as you can see now, there's a disconnect between the HOA and that developer. Developer's done, walks away. It's up to the HOA to maintain that, and we've got to have some teeth in that. And I don't have the answer for that, but I think to have these HOAs walk away from their responsibility and want the city to take this over is going to be a bigger problem in the future. I also have concerns about the city not having requirements for certain trees planted in HOAs in the park strips. The city is paying money to maintain those trees, and they ought to consider what's being put in the first place and not have a problem down the road. It's been a concern of mine for quite a while that we've got to have something. Being on the beautification committee, I am concerned about it and would like to see some regulations there with these HOAs. So that's my comment.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do I have one more minute? The small community there, I think if the Perry homes and the other community and the small, why can't I think of their Ashwood Estates, I honestly think with all those homes contributing, they could do that. They could do that area. It's just with part of them gone, they couldn't afford it.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Tim Hodges, please.
My name's Tim Hodges. Pleasure to meet you. I recently moved to the HOA back here in April. I moved out here as soon as I got my law degree and come out here and now work over at the state as a contract analyst. And just wanted to talk about what I thought about this. I obviously, I kind of go with Ms. Jennifer's point, is the fact that I believe that the HOA is able to maintain, and I think they've given a lot of opportunities up due to saying they want to be a good neighbor instead of handle their business accordingly. And so, because they've actually let go a lot of fees from other subordinate HOAs to us in the pretense of being a good neighbor. Or I don't know if it's a pretense, but that's the reason why. So I think we can sustain it, and we have the reserve funds to do so, just to Jennifer's point. And to my point, I just wanted to make a brief statement. If this goes through, I have every intention of suing the HOA. I'm going to look for an interlocutory decree, and if that doesn't work, I'm going to go for an injunction to stay the transaction based on the merits on a breach of contract claim due to fraudulent misrepresentation of me and my family. We moved into the HOA based on the established CCRs and the public promise that is out there, because that's why I moved there. And then I'm also going to go on a breach of fiduciary duty claim due to blatant self-interest dealings, not acting within the best interest of the HOA. They are also not maintaining the corporate form, and woeful lack of consideration for this transaction. And then after that, I'm going to go ahead and seek permissive joinder for all similar situated plaintiffs to come into the lawsuit, to include mortgage companies of the homeowners. And then after that, I'm going to seek compulsory joinder for this city based on your interest in the transaction that would be debated. I believe this deal is wrong. I don't think it should be done, and that's just what I think. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Michael Aoki.
I'm a member of the HOA. I've been there for 9 years. I purchased the last home actually made by the developer. And to Jennifer's point, I'd like to say that to understand what you guys are party to in this, in 2016 we voted as an HOA to go look at selling property to see how we could either maintain a portion of it by the proceeds from selling it or sell it entirely to get out from underneath of it. There was mixed opinion as to what we wanted to do. The HOA never met on it since then until recently after you guys came to an agreement. And the agreement didn't come anything close to them bringing back to us selling the property. Instead, they stopped collecting fees. 2 years of letting it go to ruin. They've had over $70,000 in the bank, which they could have been producing the maintenance on it, which they have not, and they unilaterally did that without any votes from the HOA. Now with the ruined property, they're saying, best thing that we can do is fire sell it and give it away and hope that we don't have any residual effects from that. And they've been fear-mongering amongst the group to try to get votes in, and I just think it's appalling, to be honest. And I think that's the party that you guys are in, and so I'll be joining in the lawsuit with my friend here.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Luke Johnson.
So I'm Luke Johnson. I actually live right there. I'm second property down from the equestrian. I am the first house that was built by a builder that wasn't in the area. He actually acquired the lot from Richmond American for me. I purposely bought that lot due to that equestrian. Even though I haven't personally pulled horses on my property yet, that was the reason why I bought it, is so that I could. Tim didn't mention this, but his lot is actually set up. He's got 2 stables in his lot. Tim comes from a background of raising horses. His sole intentions is to bring horses there. My sole intention is to bring horses there. And Michael didn't mention this either, but he actually purchased a pony, and his intentions is to bring that horse there. So getting rid of that equestrian is my biggest concern to my property. Doing an evaluation, talking to real estate agents, we lose $10,000 of property value by losing the equestrian. That is my biggest concern with this, is the fact that if I bring horses on, I no longer have, and we give this property to the city, I no longer have a place to actually let my horses out and run. That is one of my biggest concerns here. The other concern is what the other 2 brought up, just the timeline, how this came about, how our HOA actually ended up meeting about this. Was nothing short of me finding out about this being presented to the city, and then me raising the concerns to our supposed board at the time, which were not elected board officials, and were not really in that capacity, seeing that they didn't have their monthly meetings and didn't follow our bylaws and our CCNR's rules. So that's my concern. That's my 2 cents on what's going on here.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Nathan Alvey.
Thank you for everybody's time this evening. I am the acting president of the Schick Farms HOA. The HOA was organized in 2006-2007 as a result of a development agreement with Fieldstone Homes in Kaysville City in 2005. Fieldstone Homes never built a single property in that development agreement, which had 270 homes designed to participate and contribute towards this open area. We have had 63 contributing homeowners to this park in that period of time. It's been a long period of time working with multiple different councils where we have tried to solve this problem. Andy is probably tired of seeing me, and I'm thankful for everything that he has done along the way. We have tried solving this problem on our own and have explored options of selling a portion of it and repurposing the park. And as we worked with the city in selling a portion of this park so that we could use proceeds to repurpose it, the discussion arose of the city wanting to maintain it. Our number one goal as a community is to have it be a beautiful, useful area, and we don't think anybody can take better care of it than the city, which is why I personally voted in favor of what has been proposed here. We have hired legal counsel as an HOA and had 2 meetings with our community prior to the vote. At the vote, 92% of the homeowners voted in favor of this proposition for the city to take control. We don't view it as a surrendering. We're running away from a problem. This has been a 12-year problem we've been working on. We view this as a win-win. And we feel we've acted in good faith the 12 years we've had the property. I'm saddened that 100% of those opposed to this proposal from our HOA are here, and you don't see the other 92%. I'm representing the 92% that are in favor of what has been proposed here tonight.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so that is everyone who has signed up to speak to this item. So let's go to questions from council. Councilmember Adams.
Many questions. So that's great that there's a 92%, group of people who are in support of this, but we represent 100% of the people at large. And for us to take this on is a lot more complex. I appreciate the comments that have been made on both sides of the table tonight. I appreciate the comments that have been made about the issues that arise with the HOAs, and I don't think that a city should be the rescue vehicle for HOA's problems. A few questions that I have are, how costly is it to maintain a horse arena? These don't need to be answered, but I want to throw them out there. I've been in that field of expertise my entire life, and that can't be that expensive to maintain. And if someone doesn't like the arena, I've heard that we're going to be barred from, as a city, if we take the land, we're going to be barred from doing a whole lot out there, and we're going to be barred from keeping the arena in the agreement because you don't want dust coming in your houses. Well, why did you move there then? So I'd like to propose that question to the 92%. I don't like the agreement because it's like, here, take our wasteland that we've let go and we haven't taken care of, and we've adulterated it, take it from us. Oh, and by the way, you can't do this, you can't do this, and you can't do that. Now, I recall in the last council meeting, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe it's in the packet here, I don't see a sketch that we agreed that we would be provided of potential uses for the land. I don't see that in here. So in the agreement, yeah, I get it spells out no courts on the south side of 200 North, no courts, no fields, no skate park. So what are we supposed to do with it? How are we supposed to go to the taxpayers who we represent and say, hey, we just took on this land, it's wasteland, we're going to dump $100,000 to $200,000 of your money into it or more. Actually, the pond itself will absorb that much money. So we're going to take several $100,000 of your money, we're going to revamp this property that got let go, and oh, by the way, you can come and sit underneath a shade tree if you like, but there's nothing else you can do here. To me, that's pointless. I can't sell that to my constituents. I can't justifiably say why I did that, or else the floodgate will open and every other HOA will be in here. And there are others in the city that are experiencing trouble right now too with their open spaces. You know, they're growing 3-foot-tall weeds. We can't handle all that. That's not the taxpayer at large's problem. I've heard that this is a question for this body.
10 seconds.
You didn't disclose that we were timing each other.
It's part of our rules.
What is this non-disclosure that is out there with Perry Homes concerning this area? Is anybody on this body aware of that?
All right, thank you.
Andy.
I asked the council
Okay.
for an extension.
Anybody want to offer an extension to Councilmember Adams?
I would, yeah.
Thank you.
Everybody else, a second on that?
Well, as long as, I would just say point of order. I think this section before
Is
a motion
questions.
is questions,
It's
not
questions,
statements.
right.
But that was a question that you just asked.
You weren't called on? Okay. All right. So we have a council member who would like to extend the time. I think, do we need to have a second on that?
I think that's what we've done in the past.
Okay.
Yes.
A second to extend council members Adams' time 2 minutes?
I'll second.
Okay. Moved and seconded. Councilmember Adams?
Thank you.
No,
Aye.
we're voting. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
okay.
Nay?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. You have
Okay,
2
I'm
more
going to
minutes.
speed it up here. So the non-disclosure with Perry, what is that? How does that affect this property? What are we not knowledgeable and privy to? I've first posed it to us. Does anyone know about this agreement on this body? There's a no. Michelle? No. Jake? Mayor? It's a very yes or
I
no.
don't know what you're
simple-
talking about.
There's apparently a
So,
non-disclosure agreement signed with Perry Homes
According to-
that affects something.
According to, who's your source on? Andy, do you know anything about a
Is there
non-disclosure?
a non-disclosure agreement going on down there?
Not that I'm aware of. I don't
So,
know exactly
yeah.
what you're referring to.
Point of order again, these are leading questions. These are not questions for information. These are leading questions to make points.
I'll move on and I'll note the reluctancy of mayor and engineer to answer the question with a simple yes or no. An idea that has been proposed, and this is a question for staff, could we form a special service district and still bill these residents monthly
That's possible, yes.
so that they're still carrying the burden and we yoke together? Okay, so I think that deserves some exploration. And we heard tonight that there's $70,000 in their coffers. Is that going to get redistributed? That's obviously not a question for you, Andy. Well, I guess, I'll spare the president back there from coming up, but will that go back to the homeowners? I think we're potentially looking at a huge Pandora's box when it comes to HOAs throughout this city with what we're looking at here. There's really nothing that seems to outweigh the burden. The benefit doesn't seem to outweigh the burden with the restrictions, especially in the agreement that we've been dealt. So,
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Barber, do you have any questions? Questions at this time?
Questions?
Mhm.
Yes. It's actually a question I asked last meeting as well from our Parks and Rec director to speak to the cost estimated for maintaining this item. I know a lot of information was shared last time, but it seems to need to be repeated.
To answer that question, I think Cole Stevens. I think there's a lot of variables that go into play as far as the maintenance goes, whether it's just turf, sidewalks, hard court surfaces. But on general, our average maintenance costs, if we break it down per acre, are right around $3,000 to $4,000 per acre in maintenance costs in a turf grass setting. That doesn't include just a turf grass setting.
Mm-hmm. But it's just to maintain the grass as
maintain, mow, fertilize, irrigate, all that kind of stuff. But no, if you start doing other elements, then that, of course, changes.
Of course, yeah.
The cost to get it to that point, though, removing all the sand, filling in the detention pond. I mean, that's the easy.
Hey, you were not called on. That is the last time I'm going to caution you. If you cannot follow our rules,
You are embarrassing, Mayor.
you may be excused. You are excused. If you
I'd
cannot
like a
follow,
vote on that.
I'm sorry. It's not up to the council. It's up to me. You may be excused. If you cannot follow our
I'd like to
rules.
see the exact rule where it gives you authority without the council's vote.
I think I would like to take a 5-minute recess at this time, and we will discuss this. Okay, reconvening the meeting. After consulting with our city attorney, this constitutes disorderly conduct. He has been warned once and interrupted again, which constitutes disorderly conduct by state statute. I will need to have a 2/3 vote to have him removed from the meeting. So I would need to have a motion, a second, and then we would vote.
So I will make a motion to remove Councilmember Adams from this meeting based on disorderly conduct.
Do I have a second?
Yeah, I'll second for a vote.
It's been moved and seconded, and we will go for a vote. Councilmember Adams, you vote on this.
Nay.
All right, thank you.
Aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Aye.
Okay. 2/3 vote? Is that 2/3?
3/5, no.
All right.
Motion fails.
Okay. All right. Okay. I hope the point is made that I will not tolerate interruptions. You will obey our rules. You are no better than any other council member. All right?
I think they're your rules.
Not called on. Okay. Can we move on? Do you understand? All right.
They're your rules.
Actually, they are this council's rules that were adopted before I was ever elected. So that is the case. All right. So, Councilmember Barber, last I remember you were making a comment.
Yes, I was.
Thank you.
Question, because we're still in question.
Questions.
Oh, my question was, if in the agreement we have a condition of Perry Homes agreement to participate in this plan as outlined.
There are no agreements with Perry Homes at this time regarding this property.
And that is my only question, is how to ensure Perry Homes does work well. I know that we've talked to them, the HOA's expressed that, but I want to just make sure we have a contingency with their agreement.
We have talked with Perry Homes. They have verbally said that they would be willing to work with us. What we're referring to is the property, it's anticipated a road will come around this way, as kind of shown where the trail is. So there's this piece of property that they own.
Yeah.
They're indicated that they would be willing to do an open space subdivision with the property to the west and leave that as open space and be willing to deed that to the city as part of that process. But there is no agreements at this point.
Do you feel like we need an agreement before signing this with Perry Homes?
Based on what Perry Homes has presented at this point, I don't believe that's necessary.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Councilmember DeCare, any questions?
No.
Okay. Councilmember Garn, any questions?
No questions.
Councilmember Page, any questions?
No questions.
Okay, thank you. We'll go on to council comments. Councilmember Adams.
Mayor, we actually probably need a motion.
A motion, thank you. Well, I will entertain a motion at this time.
I'll make a motion that we approve the Schickling's agreement, open space agreement, sorry.
Do we have a second?
Second? No.
Okay. It's been moved by Councilmember Barber, seconded by Councilmember Garn. Now we will take comments. Councilmember DeCare?
No.
Any comments?
Oh, yeah,
Barber?
No comments.
Yes, comments. How I look at this item, I think, and I'll restate what I've said in previous meetings, is I look at it from the perspective of the city and representing what is best for the city. I can understand homeowners' frustrations and grievances, and I hope they are able to work those out. But as far as the city and the opportunity that this presents, I think we look at it on a case-by-case basis. I initially was very hesitant because I don't want to set a precedence for HOAs that don't want to hold up their burden. but this opportunity warrants looking at it uniquely. You know, it has parking, it has huge space, and it'll be a great asset to the community right off West Davis corridor. And there's been a lot of compromise, for sure. It's not exactly what I wanted to see. It's not exactly what the homeowners wanted to see, but it's been a compromise. I think that's a key component, and we've worked very, very hard to get to this point, and I think it'll work out very well for the future in the city. And if things come up again, we'll look at it with similar perspective. What's the opportunity that this presents for the city? I highly doubt I would be in favor of absorbing an HOA ever again in the future.
Thank you. Councilmember Adams, any comments?
I don't think we can put a seal of a one-time deal on this. Okay, I think we're going to have pretty open minds going forward if we're going to do this, and it's very apparent, judging by the fact that all four of you jumped to second the motion, that this is going through. I want it on the record. I don't see the benefit to the taxpayers. That horse arena is smack dab in the middle of homes, and I think some power plant stuff. And we're being told that all we can do is put some sidewalks, some grass, and some trees. There can't be any league play. There can't be any kind of sports fields or courts. I don't see how that benefits the youth of the city. And our park and rec, we should be geared towards looking for those kind of things, not just somewhere for someone to go and read a book. There's plenty of space in the city for them to do that. On the north side, again, we're taking on a detention pond that is full of mosquitoes, probably tules, who knows what kind of critters, because it does sit below the water table. So it's constantly a swamp. Why are we taking this is what I ask ourselves again. And, if it was beautiful and ready to go and it had a function that it could provide for the youth and, for the city, I could see that. But we get this teeny little narrow neck next to that pavilion. We're not even sure what Perry Homes will do. We're banking on the future that we can hopefully keep all of that intact, but they're not required to do that. So, again, I think there's enough money in the HOA. The lady who commented tonight, I believe her mother lives in the patio homes. They're part of the people who don't pay their fee anymore. I believe their fee was $26, $27 a month. Times that by, 80-ish, 70, 80 homes in there. If this HOA could just recoup that, I think they would be back on track. So I think we're going down a pretty bad road here, especially the restrictions. I'll speak to those again real quick. The restrictions that are in this document telling us that we can't do this and this and this with it. Honestly, don't know why we would take this.
Thank you. All right. Councilmember Page, any comments?
Yeah, the only comment I have is, this particular area is one of the last areas in Kaysville that's, that we actually have a little bit of land that will be developed down the road. I think we need to be very careful on these things. I think down the road, though, I think we're going to look at this and say, this was a good opportunity for the city because it will be used as it's developed and people come into this area, because not only that, this area doesn't have that opportunity, and so I think it's an answer.
Okay, thank you. All right, Councilmember Garn, any comments?
Yeah, thank you. Trying not to repeat what has already been said by other council members, but maybe just to emphasize the point that the city really doesn't get involved in private HOA matters, private property, so we've been given an opportunity, and so the question for me is this a good place for a park? Does the city need it? Will the citizens use it? I think maybe the nearest park, if I'm not mistaken, is probably Barnes Park. So this is a quadrant of the city that I think could benefit from having a city park at relatively small cost, basically cost of maintenance, but no cost of the land. And one other thing I would say too is I'm normally very, essential services. What does the city do? Streets, roads, water, fire, police protection, but also parks and recreation. And the feeling of a community is very much impacted by its open space and the ability for people to gather in a community. And if we miss this opportunity, I mean, frankly, city council members come and go. Even employees come and go. Pipes wear out and are replaced, and roads are replaced. But parks stay for generations. And so I think it's a good opportunity that the city should take advantage of.
Thank you. All right.
Mayor, I have an additional comment.
Councilmember Barber.
Thank you. In regards to the restrictions on the south side, that was an area of compromise as well. It's not exactly what I wanted to see, but if we were going out and purchasing this property, that would be a very different conversation, I think. So the compromise came, and one of the things, and I know I've said this in previous council meetings, so forgive me, is that we don't have a lot of passive parks in our city. You know, if you look at our recreational schedule, which I've looked at extensively, they're almost always booked. We almost always have. The closest park is probably actually Angel Street Park, which is just around the corner. Soccer park that's continually booked for soccer practices. I think it'd be great to have a dog park. I think it'd be great where you could go play and have a passive area to play, and not an ideal situation, or not exactly what I would have asked for, but it's a compromise, and so I think that's gone well.
Okay, thank you. All right, I think we're ready to vote. Councilmember Barber.
Aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes 4-1. Thank you. All right. We'll go to rezone of 0.25 acres of property at 425 East Crestwood Road from R18 single-family residential to public use zoning district. And Lyle.
Thank you, Mayor. The proposal before us is a piece of property that Kaysville City actually owns. It's on the southwest corner of the cemetery. It's an existing home. For several years, the city's been leasing the property for use as a dwelling or residence, and is no longer interested in that particular business, but is looking actually to perhaps have a cemetery office on this corner. It's about 1/4 acre. The surrounding property and the remainder of the cemetery is zoned public use. And based on the way the ordinances are read up and read, cemetery type use listed under public use seems more appropriate for the desired office function on this property. The Planning Commission did hold a public hearing on this and ultimately voted unanimously to recommend approval as proposed to the City Council.
Okay, thank you. We don't have anybody signed up to speak to this item, so we'll go to council questions. Councilmember Adams. Any questions?
Not this time.
All right. Councilmember Garn?
No questions, thank you.
Councilmember DeCare?
No questions.
Councilmember Barber?
No questions.
Councilmember Page?
No.
Okay. I'd entertain a motion at this time.
Sorry, go ahead, Larry.
Okay, I move that we rezone the 0.25 acres of property at 425 East Crestwood Road from R18 to PU zoning district.
Okay.
Second.
All right. It's been moved by Councilmember Page, seconded by Councilmember DeCare. Any comments at this time? Councilmember Adams?
I'll reserve the right.
Okay. Councilmember Barber?
No.
Councilmember DeCare?
Just one quick one. I think that this is a perfect example of the correct way to do land use. So I think this is well executed and well done and serves very well. So
Thank you. Councilmember Garn, any questions or comments? Sorry.
It makes sense, I agree.
Okay. And Councilmember Page, any comments?
Okay, just a quick question. Maybe this is probably a good one for Cole, but I noticed behind this house there's just a lot of dirt and stuff. Is that going to be developed or?
And he could probably clarify that. So because of the grade on the property, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Cole, the Parks Department's actually planning on bringing parking in from that side, so you would access it from the cemetery and essentially a parking lot type area.
Oh, okay.
We'll get more detail.
See, you answered it.
Yes, that's partly you're referring to this piece here.
Right.
Yes, we've been saving that, looking at long-term for a Veterans Memorial area, but we are planning to put an irrigation system in and saw that. The parking area is going to be angled parking right here in this strip that's already inside the existing cemetery. So all travel to the house will be from within the cemetery, nothing on the street.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I've
All
had
right.
several people ask.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we've had comments. I think we're ready for a vote. Councilmember DeCare?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Thank you. All right, next we have rezone of 25 acres of property at 700 South Deseret Drive from general commercial to R2 residential zoning district to include PRUD, planning residential unit development overlay zone, and the light industrial zoning district. Lyle.
Thank you, Mayor. Excuse me. So I'll give an introduction to this as well. I know the applicant is here with materials they're hoping to share as well, so there's quite a bit on this one. I'll try and keep it succinct, although it'll probably take a few minutes, and always happy to take more questions or any information that the council would like from us if desired. But in short, the property just south of Boondocks, sandwiched between Deseret Drive and I-15, currently vacant, is the property under consideration. It is 25 acres, a large piece of property, zoned general commercial. And Ivory Homes, the applicant, has submitted an application to rezone this. We've been working on it through the Planning Commission process since April, so for quite some time. Ultimately, they came in with the desire to do some sort of residential product on it, and it has morphed over time to include a 50-50 mix, essentially, of still a commercial use, but in a light industrial zone for the north half, as you can see in purple in your packet and there on the screen. And the lower half would be the residential component under an R2 zone. What that essentially allows for is the density that they're hoping to get on homes. So an R2 could allow for two-family dwellings, duplex, twin home type development, higher density. But of note, the development agreement that Ivory is proposing and is in front of you further restricts that. So it is limited, though it says R2, to single-family detached residence only. And then the purpose of the PRUD allows for the type of development being proposed. So it does include some common open space areas with playground amenities, and the general layout of the lots more or less mandates that it be done through the PRUD that allows for some flexibility in lot design to get away from some of just the standard square lots. In particular, the darker green lots are a rear load, alley load product that would not be feasible without the PRUD type consideration. Just of note, kind of based on the process that's gone through, the Planning Commission's held originally in April, public hearing, had another meeting after that where there were some tweaks to the plan, and ultimately they said, let's put this out to the public to get some more comment and feedback. The city essentially hosted and put on an open house at the library to discuss this, where the developer was, or the applicant was present, as well as the city to take feedback from the community on the proposal. And later, Ivory Homes hosted a second, call it an open house, but it was a little bit more of a presentation format, but they did do some question and answer at Boondocks with notice to the immediate neighborhood that they had given out. Based on that, the proposal that came back is what you see before you. Ultimately, the Planning Commission, get the correct wording here for you, voted to recommend approval of the proposal. The differences between what's in the development agreement and their recommendation that's worth noting is they seem to be on board with the residential component in their motion, and about 7 acres as it was proposed, with the understanding of a gym user that had been involved with the process. And then the northern 5 acres of the property, just right up against Boondocks, the Planning Commission said don't rezone that, leave that general commercial. The development agreement before you is a request to rezone all of it to the light industrial zoning district. They're fairly similar in what's allowed within those districts. but light industrial district has many additional items that are in there. So of note, that was part of the conversation, neighborhood storage could be permitted under that would not be allowed in the general commercial zone. And the other items that were discussed more specifically were the architectural standards and commercial design standards. So the light industrial district is not subject to that, and so it requires essentially a more detailed and often more expensive build under the general commercial zone. I think that summarizes it in short with the recommendation from the Planning Commission. Again, happy to take additional questions, and the applicant is here, I believe, with the presentation if you'd like to hear more from them as well.
Can we hear from the applicant next before we go on to public comment? Thanks.
Evening, Council. Brian Prince with Ivory Development. I appreciate the time tonight. I do have a presentation to give you an update on the proposed project. I have Bruce Zollinger here tonight, who represents the current property owner. The current property owner is still America First Credit Union. I've asked Bruce to kind of give you guys some context and history to the property for a few minutes, and then I'll come back and give a brief presentation. Thank you. Good evening, council members, mayor. I'm grateful to stand before you and kind of give some context on the history of the property. My name is Bruce Zollinger, and I work with CBRE, a brokerage firm out of Salt Lake City, and we represent America First Credit Union. We've listed the property for the last 4 years with them, and have been aware of the property since 2002 when Terry Deal purchased the property. And I can't speak much to Terry's involvement. I know he had, he went through basically almost 2 cycles of very active land market to 2008 when things kind of went south. He did have some people interested in it, but it's America First Credit Union took it back, and I think they had it for a couple of years before they listed it with us. But since then, I can speak to the last 4 years. It's a very unique property. It has all that freeway frontage, and we've had almost all the interest we've had on this property has been 0 retail, 0 commercial. Everybody wants to do multifamily on this piece. We've had, I know you guys have seen some of those buyers come in and talk to you. I'm sure the city planners and that have interviewed those. And, I think with Ivory's plan there, I don't think the city wants multifamily there. And so, we've had a lot of years of just sitting there. The main issue to the commercial viability of this property, in my opinion, is the access points off of the freeway. If it was closer to the freeway ramp, right now, it's kind of a weave and a jog to get back there to this piece, and so that's been a deterrent for major commercial use. But it's always interesting because you just have such great frontage to the freeway, but the access is poor. So currently, we're hoping that the Ivory's plan gets approved there. America First Credit Union is behind it, and we just hope the council will consider an alternate use there other than commercial. And we're at the top of the second real estate cycle here since 2008, and and still no interest in the commercial side of things, where we've seen, we were involved in the Champ Mercedes dealership down the road. They looked at this site. We pitched it to them, and we honestly pitched it to quite a few other developers that we've sold property to, but in the end, they can't get around the access and just the neighborhood feel there right now. So that's my comment. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Bruce. So with that, we as a reminder, after getting feedback from staff and several of you, we put the property under contract and made application in April. And the original proposal was 20 acres of residential and 5 acres of commercial. Oh, there we go. So that was the original proposal that went to the Planning Commission. And so you can see the original idea was to have 5 acres of commercial next to boondocks and then 20 acres of residential. So we went to the Planning Commission in June, and the feedback and challenge we were given was, one, there was concern that there was not enough commercial. Two, there were a lot of concerns about traffic, and we were asked to do a comparative traffic impact study to show traffic impact that would come from this project relative to if under general commercial, the current zoning, if it was ever built out, what would be the comparative traffic impact? And then also we were asked to go back and get some feedback from the surrounding neighborhood to see if we could get some consensus from the surrounding residents on what should happen there. And so, So we did that. One, we hired Hales Engineering that has completed that traffic impact study, and I have a representative here tonight from Hales that can speak to that and answer any questions you have about that traffic impact study report. And like Lyle mentioned, we held two open houses, one at the library that was really just for the general public on August 15th, and on August 22nd we had I wanted to have a more focused conversation with the residents across the street, so we invited the adjacent neighborhood to Boondocks one night on August 22nd and had a more kind of targeted conversation about what those neighbors would like to see. And so from those open houses, we made the commitment to do half and half commercial, half residential. The orange is the commercial, the blue is residential. And this was the proposal we took back to the residents that had a combination of front load, single family detached, along with some higher density rear load product. And the feedback we got was that this was still too high dense. It was they wanted to see a lower density proposal. And so we ended up here so the original proposal was about 8 units an acre. We're at about 5.8 now. And I was asked in a couple of those open houses, can you give us an example of what this is, Ivory, what is your vision here? What is this going to look like? Can we go drive a community? And Orchard Farms, as you're familiar with, is just up the street. We're not proposing any apartments, but behind those apartments, if you drove through that neighborhood, you could see some single-family homes, and that density in Orchard Farms is a pretty good comparison to what we're proposing here, which is, like Lyle mentioned, just single-family homes. Here's an example of a floor plan that would of the front load garage product. There's another example, and then here's another example of what that rear load product would be with the garage in the back. And so from those open houses, we came back and I proposed lower density. The other big concern was open space. Let's see if I have. Let's see here. So along the frontage here, we're showing about a 50-foot open space corridor buffer. This is one to accommodate the major gas line that went in early this year, as well as we really like the idea of having those homes, having a good buffer between Deseret Drive and where those homes will sit. We'd like to continue that trail and that connects into the adjacent subdivision and across the street. And then here in the back, we envision some open space and a small playground that would be fenced off for safe use there in the southeast corner. And that was a big concern from the residents we met with. And then the other big feedback we got was that the residents were supportive of these proposed uses of the commercial, which is a lot of the interest we've received from potential buyers of the non-residential, the light industrial, would be similar to what you see north of Boondocks in that office industrial space that's being built or has been built over the last couple of years, or self-storage is the kind of the big interest we've seen so far. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. We do have, again, a representative here from Hales Engineering that can answer any questions about the traffic study that was submitted, and as well as we have a partner here that is interested in doing some self-storage that can speak to their proposal on the light industrial piece.
Okay.
Any questions I can answer?
Not at this time. We're going to go to public comment next.
Can I ask for an opportunity to come back and answer any questions that come up during the public hearing?
I'll keep that in advisement.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks. All right. We're going to go to public comment period. Okay. And I have Lori Cragen first.
Good evening. My name is Laurie Cragen. It's been a while since I've been here visiting. It's nice to be here. I have a couple of things. I haven't prepared any remarks, but just a couple of comments. I did email some of you today, and I got about 3 responses back, and I appreciate you responding. I have watched Planning Commission since April, and it's kind of gone on for quite a while. It was mentioned in Planning Commission, the last meeting. It came up and they wanted public comment and no one was there. And so the comment was made by one of the planning commissioners of something to the effect of, no one's here, so I guess no one cares. And that's not necessarily the case. I think some of us are battle weary. It's taken so long, and sometimes our Thursday nights get kind of busy. I would have been there last Planning Commission had I known that LI was on the table. Somehow that slipped past me, and I didn't notice that. I thought we were talking only general commercial. It hasn't been mentioned today. There was mention of Congo Gym going in there, and that was why it was being asked to be LI. I have no problem with Congo Gym or something like that. I think that would be a great asset to that area. I do have a problem with the LI zoning. I like the general commercial zoning, and if I'm correct, the buildings would be at a higher standard than a light industrial zoning. This is in the middle of a neighborhood of $400,000 plus homes. I think that the building that Climate did and the building that Boondocks is goes nicely with our area. We've worked closely in the past with Boondocks as far as their lighting, their signage, their noise. They've been great neighbors, and that has been a good experience for our neighborhood. Mr. Zollinger, I believe was his name, mentioned the neighborhood feel. That's what we have. We have a neighborhood feel. And we are very close as a neighborhood. We are very active in looking what's happening with this space. I did listen to Planning Commission about the gentleman who wants storage units. Along Deseret Drive from Old Mill to, Burton Lane, That's about a 1.5 mile stretch. We have 2 locations of storage units. I think we're tapped out on the storage units, really. That is not what our neighborhood feel is. I listened to his presentation that he said, that they were different and very neighborhood friendly. I think we don't want to be known as the storage unit neighborhood. So I would personally appreciate not the LI zoning and keep the whole property general commercial.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Jennifer Borup.
My name is Jennifer Borup, and I live in this neighborhood across the fence from Boondocks. I also have a concern about changing the zone from general commercial to light industrial because of the standards of the building. I don't necessarily have a problem with a little bit more housing. I'm concerned about losing that property as general commercial for that base for our city because we are lacking in that area. And I know that there are other areas that could have a little higher density housing. So those are my main concerns. I would like to keep it general commercial. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. Mr. Prince, do you feel you need to answer anything?
First, I failed to clarify that we are not asking for a vote tonight because it's been some time since we've been here. We'd like to just get input on the proposal and come back with a revised plan if necessary for a vote. We're still working on some issues with the property owner, but wanted to keep the process moving. So we thought we'd take advantage of the opportunity tonight to get feedback from the council and then come back another night.
Okay, thank you. All right, we're going to take questions from the council now and then let you know. Right?
Thank you so much.
All right. Okay, Councilmember Adams, any questions?
I'll hold for now.
Okay. Councilmember DeCare, questions? No. Councilmember Barber, any questions?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I also listened to the Planning Commission on September 13th, twice actually, because there was a lot that went on and a lot that I was surprised about. So my question is on the light industrial. It seemed like from that meeting, the request to rezone it, that was basically the building type that was being proposed, metal structure rather than the buildings that are similar to the ones north of Boondocks. Is I correct in that?
So yeah, to answer that question, Councilmember Barber, the Planning Commission specifically stated that they would be okay for the purposes of accommodating the architecture and the proposed user, the light industrial zone being on that piece alone. And so there was an additional 5 acres of property that their recommendation was not to rezone to the light industrial district, but to maintain as a general commercial. The proposal, I believe, did show, and I think there was some question marks with it just because of the way it was listed on the plan, and I don't know if it's one here in our presentation, stated general commercial as a user, and I think it was something that confused a lot of people where the request was always from the applicant to do the whole thing with light industrial, and they listed that, I believe, just as a general use. They didn't have a known user when they had submitted it at the time, but I do think that caused some confusion as to were they asking for commercial on that or not. So through the discussion, it was made clear, and their continued request is they would like light industrial on all of it, but that is not the Planning Commission's recommendation.
Would the applicant want to speak to the building itself that's being proposed?
Yeah, Councilmember Barber, that's a good question. A part of that's we've been trying to find, I'll call them partners. We're a home builder, and this is we're looking for a partner to solve this equation and provide that non-residential use for the property. The vast majority of the potential buyers are interested in a smaller piece. I think one of the biggest challenges with this property over the last 10 years has been the bank would not, become a developer and subdivide off pieces. It had to be all or nothing. And so I think there is some interest in commercial developers in some smaller acreage, but it's all been for an industrial type of use. And there was mention of Congo Athletic Club. They're a potential buyer here. I know that I believe Chaz has talked to you, Mayor, and maybe a few council members about the idea of relocating the Congo Athletic Club here. And that was, so a part, to answer your question, a part of that light industrial proposal was to accommodate Congo. They're trying to make it financially possible to build. I think they're proposing a really nice building, but to have that light industrial ordinance would allow them to build a more efficient building and keep the money in their amenities and facilities within the project, as well as the climate office space, flex space to the north, and other potential users have shown that same interest. So essentially, the answer is we're trying to keep the net as wide as possible to ensure that we're going to be able to develop that over time. I do have a potential user here that would like to speak to their ideas for that use. If you give him a minute or two to.
I think we're good.
Okay, that's fine. We're good.
Okay.
Okay, thanks. Councilmember Kerr, do you have any questions?
Questions? No.
No questions. Councilmember Page.
Page. Mine's the easiest name here.
I'm getting close. All right, I'm getting better.
Hey, just a quick one. How committed is Congo on this piece of property?
We're still trying to work out I think they're struggling with the exact layout and dimension. It was once they wanted all 12 acres, then it was 5, then it was 7. So they're still working out. We're still talking with them about their final layout and design. I'm not going to stand here and tell you that they're all in. I can't commit to that. It's a local business that's trying to figure things out. We sure hope that they are able to commit. I think it would be a great asset for this area of the city, and it's a great user. I think it's a sustainable user as a kind of a destination business. To answer your question, Councilmember Page, it's in process. We're still working on it.
Okay. And then on the other piece, I guess there's no firm commitment on that as well, correct?
On the northern piece, we have some gentlemen here from Coldwater Capital that are interested in doing some self-storage, and that's who we'd like to have on that northern piece in between Congo and Boondocks. And that's the plan is right now. It could change, but that's what we've come up so far.
All right, thanks.
Okay, thanks. Councilmember Garn, any questions?
Just one question, probably for city professional staff. That is, a few council meetings ago, we had some discussion of the interchange being reworked. And one of the ideas was that the on-ramp going south to go south onto I-15 from 200 North would perhaps split, part going on the freeway, another providing a better access to this area that we're talking about. Has there been any further discussion, or how is that firmed up at all? How realistic is that possibility?
I'm happy to answer that. Mayor and I met with Mr. Peterson, who's the Region 1 Director, probably about a month ago, and that was one of the we were meeting for another reason, but we asked him about that project, and he said it's been not designed, but the concept plan is complete, and it is on the radar of other work in Davis County. But he was said to be realistic, it wouldn't be happening within the next 5 years. So he said it was a more than 5-year project. But if it's not that, it'll probably be some kind of a SPUI or another reworking of that interchange. But they really like that plan a lot, and it sounds very viable.
Yeah, so in other words, the design is a possibility. It's just a question of when UDOT gets their priority up. And I guess the only other question I would ask is, I just think of the numbers. When I first moved here, we had this, in 1987 2006 or something like that, we had the 10,000 people maybe in Kaysville. Now we have over 30,000, and we still have the same number of interchanges. And so I know we can't, we're just Kaysville, but maybe we could work actively on moving that up a little bit. But
I think one of the things we did really poorly is we striped that lane to 4 lanes, and I think that took a lot of pressure off of that interchange. So we shouldn't have done that. I'm of course teasing, but we are doing that, and fortunately, Mr. Peterson does live in Kaysville, so we get to see him regularly, and we try to mention that project as much as we can.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. All right. Okay, so we've had questions. I'd entertain. First, let me mention, so Mr. Prince has suggested that we not vote on this tonight. Would anybody like to move that we table this item? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion at this time.
Well, I will move to deny the rezone application for this property by the applicant, Ivory Homes.
And a second?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further comments? Councilmember Gurn.
Yeah, I would just like to say, first of all, I would like to commend Ivory Homes for how accommodating they have been to try and rework the design several different ways. And also the Planning Commission for the good job they did, in recommending unanimously, actually, that we take the opposite of action of the motion that I just made. And if I view this in isolation, or if I was still serving on the Planning Commission and I was just looking at this property in isolation and saying, is this a good development, I would say it's well planned, well thought out. Kudos to the developer. But when I look at it in the larger context of the city and the limited commercial space that we have, I still have a lot of hope that we can develop this land commercially, and that would be a better overall. That's the overriding concern. So I love the project, but just not there where we have our little remaining commercial space.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Councilmember Barber?
Yes, I did. I would just echo that. I think if this were a residential area already, I would think this is a fantastic proposal. I think the community engagement has been really great. I think the accommodations have been well. But even when I was listening to Planning Commission, I kept thinking, this is a major rezone. This is a major rezone from our biggest, quite literally the biggest decision we will make in this body, changing it to residential and light industrial, which completely changes the feel. So I think in the best interest of the city, I think we keep looking.
Are we out of order? Do we not need a second?
Councilmember
There's a
DeCare.
motion on the table.
Councilmember DeCare seconded. Yeah, it was moved and seconded. All right, Councilmember DeCare.
Just to echo my fellow commissioners on this, and not to sound redundant, but with my 5 years on the Planning Commission prior to this, we've gone through a lot of things in Kaysville, a lot of land use issues in Kaysville, and we've approved a lot of things, we've denied some things, but I think that, to me, the overarching sentiment here, in my eyes, with this is, with this being the last large congruent piece of land that we have to develop commercially, I'm personally not willing to give that up on something like this. I think that there's time. I think there will be other things that come along. Maybe the interchange will change. Maybe we will have an access road there off of I-15. That would be exceptionally beneficial. So I feel comfortable with the motion, comfortable to the fact that I seconded it, and that's where I reside on this issue.
Thank you. Councilmember Page, any comments?
Yeah, just first of all, I just want to commend Ivory for the process and what you've done to this. You know, I've been involved in a lot of discussions on this throughout since I've been on the council, and this is a tough piece of property. There's no doubt about it. And I know that that's a big issue. I guess the thing that I'm concerned about on this particular deal is I'm okay sometimes with a mixed use that you're proposing. I think that you've looked at it in a very good way, and with the single family and different things like this. I guess the concern that I have too is all commercial isn't equal. I would be, to me, having storage units is a no starter, and the reason is there's no sales tax to the city on those kind of things. It's not a money maker for us in any way. And then, I'd be very hesitant to go with the light industrial and to change that as well. And I guess my big thing, and maybe this would be a no starter for Ivory, but I have just seen in the past that on these type of mixed-use deals where building homes is very easy, and you can throw them up. Where commercials it's a lot harder. I've seen where situations like this where all of a sudden we get the residential done, there's no commercial, especially if there's no commitment, and then it turns into a weed patch, and then down the road they can't get anything done because automatically by doing a 50-50 split and the way that we've done it and stuff like that, if we don't have committed people in place, I could see that down the road that might be a difficult thing to, it's kind of limiting different businesses from coming in, and I guess that's a concern. I think the only way that I would approve something like this, it would have to have the parties in place, and it's a good fit for Kaysville, and on top of it, I would like to see the commercial develop first to make sure that it happens, and then it's not a deal that down the road we have a big problem, then another developer comes in and just says, well, we'll take that off your hands and we'll just turn it into residential. Then we've just changed our commercial, lost all of our commercial. That's the big struggle I think that we have in Kaysville. I wish that 40, 50 years ago we figured this out a little bit better and probably presented more commercial. I think we're paying the price now. Kaysville's very low on our stuff, and my time's up. So anyway, that's where I stand.
Thank you. Councilmember Adams.
No hammer. Wow. So I think that we are down the road on this project. I think we are in the future on this project, and I'd hate to be the landowner sitting here just waiting and hoping and waiting after all these years. The biggest concern that constituents have raised that I've heard is traffic in this meeting and outside of this meeting. One great thing to alleviate traffic on an oddball piece of land like this is storage units. They're a sleeping, quiet little thing. So it is what it is, folks. To echo Councilmember Page's point, one point that I do agree on is 40, 50 years ago there were some mistakes made. But that shouldn't be on the landowner's end of the table here. I mean, realistically, Deseret Drive should have connected to Second North. That should have been planned out, so we have an artery for that. Of course, Deseret Drive came, later on down the road, but there should have been more of a grand master plan on our part. This property, it's had everybody look at it. From Topgolf to you name it. You'd think Topgolf could be sustainable there because they're pretty much a destination, and they just business, and they says no, it's too awkward to get there. So I feel like we're holding the landowner in abeyance here. I don't know how fair that is to them, but the project is well designed. I don't think that down the road there's going to be much other people pitching us to do anything with it. I think to keep holding them off doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and to hold them off, well, give us contracts on who will come there with you. Well, we can't, I don't know how much we could push that envelope legally. So, yeah, I think there's great concern there. The traffic would obviously be the biggest one, but I think you've done the best you can. I'm sure it's not cheap land. But it's sitting there doing nothing now. So what's worse?
Okay, thank you. Yes, Councilmember Garn.
I'll make this very brief, but I just wanted to say, and I don't represent the city, just one of 5 members of the legislative body, so I don't represent the whole city anyway, but is there anything we can do, as a city, professional staff or whatever, that we're not doing? We already mentioned the access being one of the major problems why this has been difficult to develop commercially. But are there other things we can do in partnership, either with applicant or owner, to encourage commercial development, that the city could do? So I almost hesitate to say that because I don't have an idea of what I would do personally, but I'll just throw that out there because, you look at Ogden, so many different cities that partner with development efforts. And is there something we could do to be good partners? Because I don't want the land either, even though we're waiting for commercial. Obviously, the sooner that we could do that, the better.
Thank you. All right. Okay. All right. So
I have one additional.
Councilmember Adams.
Well, the thought I had as I sat back here and thought about, the LI versus the commercial, I've heard Costco thrown around, and that's just a dead rumor, I'm sure. It's just a wish list of folks in town, but it's not likely for them. It's too encumbered to get there. And if they did show up, their traffic is way worse. I mean, horrifically worse. So people need to pick their poison.
Thank you. All right, I think we're ready to vote. Councilmember Adams.
Nay.
Aye.
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 Okay, motion passes 4-1. Thank you. All right. All right. We're now moving on to our work items. Thank you. Okay, so I think I'm going to talk about the 4th of July parade seating ordinance discussion. So for many years, we've had signs out that say, don't set up your stuff before July 3rd. And routinely, we have people setting up their stuff on July 2nd. So this year, we went out and said, hey, please don't set up your stuff before July 3rd, and it didn't go very well. And so what we need to decide as a council is really how are we going to approach this? So signs don't work, so unless we have an ordinance to back them up. I will say that my thoughts have changed on this because originally I'm like, we need an ordinance to back up our signs. And then I had a discussion. I talked with Stroh, who has run our parade for 11 years.
Yep.
11 years. I talked to our police chief, our assistant police chief. I talked to Cole Stevens. I spoke to a lot of people about what is the best way to do this. And kind of my thoughts have changed because I was thinking we need an ordinance. And then after talking specifically to Chief Oberg and realizing that if we have an ordinance, then we have to, and we will enforce it, make no mistake about that. And then what do we do with all the stuff that we then have to confiscate? Then it has to be tagged and it has to be kept in reserve, and you have to get it back to the people, and which ends up being an even larger nightmare. And quite frankly, our police, they'll do this if they have to, but they'd really rather not. So it made me go back and think, do we really need to have signs? And do we just let people make good decisions? But after talking to Stroh, I think I feel like, Stroh, your idea, which is very good. Go ahead, introduce it.
He's kind of middle. So just essentially not erecting signage of any kind at all. know it might kind of seem a little Wild West-ish of a mindset to do that, but after having purview over this for the past 11 years, when I go out there to pull signs at midnight on July 3rd, it's about as close to the Wild West as it gets out there. So I've been called a lot of colorful names, like "Who are you?" and "What's your business here?" and so it's frustrating, and it has gotten worse, progressively worse over the past 10 years. I am not in favor of an ordinance, especially if we do end up doing it, well, which I don't think we're going to. I mean, or at least that's my suggestion, that we don't. Because if we have one, we have to be forced to enforce it, period, end of story. I think without an ordinance, I think we're fine to not put out signage, kind of let it all go organically and just let it happen. I can tell you that my relationship, my professional and personal relationship with the police department over the past 5-6 years, and their involvement and their engagement with our community on the 4th of July and the days leading up to it has been nothing short of spectacular. And I really don't want to compromise that relationship that we have in any way whatsoever. And having an ordinance could possibly do that. And I just don't think that, I think I used the term a paper tiger too, where we have an ordinance and here it is, but you better watch out because we're never going to enforce it. So I don't think that does a whole lot of that. So, yeah.
But specifically the idea that Councilmember DeCare has, and I've heard in the community also, is the idea of extending the route.
Yes, and and extending the route and possibly making it a loop. The parade ends around Kaysville Elementary right now, although all of the floats and all the entries and that actually end up at the big LDS meeting house or steakhouse on, what is it?
Six.
Yeah, that one. So everybody ends up back there anyway. So, yeah, so making it a big loop, and running the parade through, several blocks of residential area, it disperses the density. It, gives a different kind of a parade feel, having it go through a residential area. I think that'd be kind of neat. It's such a piece of our city's fabric and our city's tradition that, I think it's a good idea.
Thank you. Yeah. So anyway, I just wanted to. We specifically slated this discussion as far away from 4th of July as we could get, both sides, so that, we'd had some time to think about how the last one went and how we want the next one to go. And so obviously this would be just a recommendation to staff. We're not going to necessarily vote, but I wanted to bring this forward to you guys to see the wisdom of those who've been here a lot longer than me. So any suggestions, Councilmember Page?
Yeah, hey, I agree with Stroh. I don't think we should handcuff the police as they're handcuffing our citizens with an ordinance.
Yeah.
My opinion is sometimes people really feel these parade things are a big thing for them. And, if they want to go out there and put their stuff out there a couple days in advance, hey, more power to them. Just don't cry if your stuff gets stolen. That's my opinion.
And no tarps. No tarps.
Okay, so anyway, I guess that's how I look at it. And I think that we don't want too many rules.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Garn, any thoughts?
Yeah, as I thought about this, how did I feel about this? And I haven't run the parade for so many years as Councilmember DeCare has, but I have showed up to probably about 30 years of them, and I just don't. My question was, is there a problem? Like, why do we even have signs? maybe somebody complained, the neighbors, that, hey, these towels or blankets or whatever really look unsightly. Yeah, but it's one day. I'm not sure I'm too persuaded by that. Are we having a huge crime problem when everybody puts their materials there? Well, I'm not aware of one. So in my mind, it was kind of like even having the signs there is a solution looking for a problem. So to have an ordinance, it almost seems that you've got to have some kind of problem, and I couldn't figure out what the problem was, so I don't think I'd be in favor of an ordinance.
Okay, thanks. Councilmember Adams, anything?
Yeah, I think as far as extending the parade route, that's been talked about for years. It should be done. Even I know Chief won't like this, but keep it on Main and run it down to Bowman's.
That's
because the Second North. Sorry, Chief. I'm sure that's a headache for you. Get you some Tylenol.
We'll look into it.
That's really the most practical route, because if you start shoving it through these the small roads, that's all really kind of quaint, cozy private property. Main Street is kind of known. It's like, hey, yeah, that's your house, but this is Main Street. This is a full width right of way. But also, yeah, I don't understand where this ever came from. I don't. If there's not an ordinance to back up the signs, it's kind of embarrassing that they've even been there. But I also don't agree that where there isn't an ordinance in place that we are bound to enforce it. Let's not go through the laundry list of unenforced ordinances, Councilmember Stroh, that exist in town. But private versus public land. I mean, I heard that this July 3rd that an individual was out tearing chairs and blankets off of LDS church property. And when they were confronted about it, they said, you can't have these here. You don't have permission. And the gentleman says, well, how do you know that I don't have permission from the LDS church to put them here? So private properties, I think, out of this discussion anyway. There never should have been a sign beyond 1 foot behind the sidewalk, which is where private begins. And the Davis High property, that's their decision. I mean, we're kind of like, over the years, somebody has been trying to regulate private land. So that's been a little bit odd. But yeah, I mean, it's a festive day. And you drive down Main and you see all that out there, and people, the anticipation in the children build, and they're like, oh, it's coming. I mean, just let it be.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Barber?
I'll echo that. I have always said of this, do or do not. Don't try. Either do it or don't do it. I think we absolutely give the community the chance of just getting out of the way. I'm sorry we won't have the signs out there for you to use to stake off your space, which is quite hilarious that we've done in the past. But as far as property rights, I agree. I hope, the damage to property, if that happens, it's up to the property owners to deal with it and take care of it. The city stays out of it. And my overreaching hope for the parade, for all of our festivities, is that it's open to the community, that there's enough space, there's enough welcome, no matter how long you've been here, that people are welcome to come join the parade, regardless of how long they've staked out their spot.
All right.
One follow-up.
Councilmember Adams.
I mean, regarding that, a private property owner has the right to call the police and say, hey, remove this stuff.
Absolutely.
Or they can remove it themselves. So it can just be self-governed.
Yeah.
And then my comments about unenforced ordinances are not aimed at the police department. They do a great job. Not those kind of ordinances.
All right, very good. All right, so just generally, I think we're going to try this, and
we're going to burn the signs.
We will burn the signs. I don't know, but I think that people just need to be respectful of property and put your best foot forward and welcome people from outside the city, first timers, all the rest. Okay. So we'll go on to work item B, health initiative employee incentives with Vasa Fitness.
Thanks, Mayor. We, as you know, Vasa Fitness is redoing the old, what was once even Albertsons building, and I think they're under construction. Should be done here in, I think I heard November, so it might be a month or so. But they approached the city, and we're talking about giving the city employees a discounted rate. And as we went back and forth, I think we negotiated a really good deal. And we have a health initiative situation program in the city, and I thought about wanting to have this as part of that, and but I didn't want to do that without just discussing it as a council. So this isn't really a legislative issue, but it's something I think it would be important for you to know if we're doing this. So the offer is for each employee to pay, but for the city to pay for the employees that sign up to do it. $16.99 a month. There's no sign-up fee, no annual contract fee or anything like that. And so this allows VASA to just bill the city directly for this amount, and so they don't have to bill individuals and do work on credit cards and things like that. So it's a benefit to them, and I think a strong benefit for the city. But again, I just wanted to hear what your feedback was, if this is something that you'd be okay with. If I put in there in the packet that I think if 20 of our 100 employees do this, it would be about $330 a month to the city. And I just think it's just one more small way we can say we can both support a business here in the city and have a benefit to our to our employees. Excuse me. So. I also maybe finally there, in theory, as you become more healthy, there's also the argument that your health premiums are also lower. I'm sure this wouldn't be a dollar for dollar decrease in our health premiums, but I think it'd just be generally we're a more healthy group and therefore we have lower health premiums. So hopefully it would be an offset there. So any questions? I'm here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember DeCare.
I think, given its merits here, I think that this is an outstanding idea, to be quite frank. So I think it would be money well spent. I think it's a benefit, given to city staff and city employees. I think it's something that would be very well received, and probably a pretty high buy-in rate too. I think. I mean, I think Kaysville likes to promote itself as a healthy city and. Active transportation plan and biking lanes, and we're fit and friendly and fun, and I just made that up, by the way. So,
trademark.
Yeah, and but no, I really do think that this is a good idea. So, all
right, thank you, Councilmember DeCare. Councilmember Garn.
Well, I'm not very good at telling jokes, but there was once a community leader who was in his 90s and asked what his secret was to good health. And he said, well, it's all the exercise I get driving to the funerals of my friends who jog. So, but with that aberration generally, exercise, is if there's any scientific theory that's proven, you talk to the whole medical community and all the experience we have suggests that when you exercise, you're healthier and there's less visits to the doctor and everything else, you get sick less, your immune strength, it's all on and on. So it's great. But the only problem is, and this is my problem, that I need to start again, is what good does a gym membership do if you don't use it? And the one thing that I like about this agreement is you get canceled if you don't use it. So we're not going to spend money on you for nothing, but if you're going to use it, it's a great benefit to the employee, to their families, and to the city.
All right, thank you. All right, any other comments on this? Councilmember Adams.
So is VASA going to track the usage then, and if you don't use it for so long, it falls off?
They will give us reports, so we will actually kick people off internally here, but they will have to provide that information to us.
And a staff member has to sign up for it. This isn't like a blanket buy-in for all 100.
No, they have to sign up for it individually, correct.
Okay, thanks. Anything? Okay. All right. I think probably what Shane would like is probably a motion to, does this need to go on?
I feel like if I just have a good consensus, I will go ahead and
direction.
implement this plan, yes. And if you want to hear back on how it goes, I'll certainly report to you weekly, if not more. So, thank you.
More than weekly?
Well, yeah, weekly or in some other fashion. Probably not more than weekly.
Okay.
That would get pretty boring.
Update me more than weekly if you'd like. All right.
You, Mayor, because I'll see you every day.
All right. Very good. Thank you so much. And I think this is going to be, it's a small thing, but it's something that our employees, I think, would appreciate and they deserve. So, okay, we'll go on to call to the public, and we have Dean Wall. Thank you, Dean, for our treat.
Yeah, I know that's probably not the, I'm Dean Wall, in case anybody didn't know. You're talking about health here, and unfortunately I brought everybody something that isn't healthy, but my doctor is making me do that. He's told me I have to get my A1C down below 7, and so having those candy bars around is a little bit too much of a threat to me, so that's why I brought them. I appreciate the work you guys do. I didn't like one thing that was done tonight, but that's okay. As a general rule, you guys do a great job, and I appreciate what you guys do. Okay? Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. Then we're going to council member reports. Let's go with, let's do Public Works. Anything?
I don't have anything specific for Public Works, but in general, including Public Works, I was able to go to the Utah Ops Conference again, which is based on this theory of constraints, success framework. And it caused me, in my work at the state, I'll tie this back in, to really think how we could do better, how even though we've implemented other things, we can still improve. And frankly, as an employee and a director, that excites me to think that, I'm not just punching the clock. I get to find a way to do something just a little better, a little higher quality, a little more value, a little faster. And so I would just commend all the city staff for being innovative and for continuing to look for new ways to think of our whole process, everything we do, and try to make it just a little better.
Thanks. Councilmember Barber.
There's a really great article in the Davis County Clipper about our youth city council, so go read that. It talked about all the great they do. And as far as Parks and Rec, we just have a few events coming up. We have our Veterans Day program next month. It'll be coming up, and Pioneer Park coming along.
Great. Power.
Nothing to report on power. We haven't had a power commission meeting for a number of months. Or power outage. So, come in. Nothing to report on that. The youth court, though, I am involved in youth court as well, and it truly is an outstanding program. The value of it that this gives to our city, to give those kids a second chance and a viable option, to fill out their sentence a different kind of way. Is a very worthwhile endeavor that Kaysville does, so in collaboration with our police department. And I just want to echo something with Councilmember Garn, too, though, that my appreciation for city staff here is absolutely amazing. I've known a lot of these folks for over a decade, and it's an absolutely wonderful place to work, and it's a great group of people. So I'm really, really fortunate to be here in this capacity. So,
thanks. Community development.
Yeah, just one thing. I actually had lunch today with a person here in Kaysville, but we had it in Bountiful, so I guess that's bad. But he was mentioning, and I think that this says a lot about what our city. He was just mentioning that he says there's a different spirit in this city. He says things are moving. He says he can't believe how many streets are being paved and how many, different things. He even talked about the bike lanes, even though he doesn't ride a bike. He thought that's a great idea. And I think it is being noticed, and I think that's a compliment to everyone, from not only elected officials but also for the staff and the city workers. So I think this is a great thing, and that I think that people are noticing that things are moving. So I appreciate that.
Thank you. Two things that I want to mention. First, we had our annual fire open house last night.
Yep.
Again, very well attended. Smokey the Bear was even there, which is awesome. And and there were fire truck rides, and people could climb in the apparatus, and there were giveaways, and so they had a great time. So thanks to our fire department for hosting that. Thing number two is today is Andy's last day for council meeting, and I really wanted to pull you up and embarrass you at the beginning of the meeting, but I won't do that because I know you hate being on camera.
I think he should embarrass him. That's my opinion.
But Andy, I have only worked with him for a couple of months, but I've seen time and time again his institutional knowledge has come through, and he's come up with brilliant ideas, and so I'm going to be looking for ways to keep him involved here in Kaysville, as even after he's retired. But from myself, this council, and every other council that you worked with, we appreciate your service. So thank you.
Was it 30 years? 30 years? Is that how long?
Close to 30, yeah.
Almost 30 years.
How long have you worked here?
I've been here over 27 years at Kaysville.
There you go.
That's just fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your service. All right. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thanks.